Hi everyone, sorry about the delay. Can everyone hear me? Can I just get a thumbs up or something just to make sure?
Hi, Swapnil.
Hey, how are you doing? Sorry
I
about the
didn't think this
delay.
was going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
look,
thought you were a Zoom master.
4 months of Zoom and I'm still struggling. The computer decided to restart itself. Sorry
Technical
about that.
issues happen, don't they?
Yep. So I'm just gonna start admitting people in. I thought I already did, but maybe I didn't. All right. So the good thing is it's already recording, which is a good thing. All right. Let me just try and get everyone in today. I'll just start in about a couple of minutes. Alec, I can see you waving there. All right. So feel free to use the chat window if you need to chat or if you need to ask a question. So we'll get started in a minute. I know we're sort of running behind time, but I think we've got enough time to cover our talks for today. All right, let's get started. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. All right, so let's get started. Thanks everyone for coming to this event. Sorry about the delay today. So the topic today is Pics or it didn't happen. It just come out of a discussion around screenshots. So welcome to the Write the Docs event. Before we start, I've just got a quick announcement to make. We've actually got 4 years into this Write the Docs Australia. I think it's turning out to be quite fun. So a big hurrah to everybody for making it. We turned 4 this July. Just gonna have to. All right. So just a quick what's on the agenda today. So we've got just a quick slide of what Write the Docs is. If you haven't been to one of the Write the Docs events before, so just a quick introduction. Then we've got Jared giving us a really quick lightning talk on the screenshots. And then we've got Lana talking about more screenshots. And then if you've got time, if someone wants to volunteer to do a lightning talk, we can get into that. So let's keep moving. I'm just sorry about this. I just have to make sure I get everyone in. So about Write the Docs. If you haven't been to one of our events before, it's a series of conferences and local meetups focused on all things related to software documentation. So it's pretty much a space where you don't necessarily have to be a technical writer. You can be anyone who does documentation as part of their roles. So you could be just a developer, UX designer, and you could be doing documentation. And that's probably the whole thing about this community is it's a very open sort of a community. People can share their experiences about documentation. Just a quick note on the code of conduct. Be friendly and welcoming, be respectful, and be careful in the words you choose. We've got a very diverse group of people here. So just make sure if you making sure you're not sort of using words that violates any of this code of conduct. If you do have any sort of questions, feel free to get in touch with me. So just a quick note on Write the Docs Australia. We've actually crossed 800 members just a couple of weeks back, which is pretty huge achievement, I guess, for the community. We've had 45 meetup events all over Australia. So Melbourne, Sydney, started off in Melbourne. We've had Sydney, Brisbane, and a couple of the Western cities as well, and also remote events. That's obviously happening a lot over the last couple of years, but we've got quite a few events under our belt, and it's all thanks to the community who link people in the community who are happy to share their experiences. We've already got 3 Write the Doc Australian annual conferences, and more on this in a minute. How do you get involved with Write the Docs? So you can join the mailing list at writethedocs.org. You can look at the global meetups list and also join the Slack channel. That's pretty active. And obviously you would have seen the meetup page that we've got for Write the Docs Australia. And And this is the big news. We've got a Write the Docs conference happening this year. Obviously, it's because of all the current scenario. We've got it as a virtual event. But this year, for the first time, we're also pairing up with Write the Docs India. So they're a pretty small sort of a community at the moment, but we're trying to get like a collaboration happening between the Indian and the Australian community. So we've got an annual conference. So mark these dates, 3rd and 4th of December. It's a weekday, but it's going to be like 2 days of just documentation madness, goodness, whatever the way you want to look at it. But it's going to be a pretty long sort of a day. If I just have to, I guess, warn you, because we'll probably be covering the event from starting off from the west coast of Australia, so a little bit later in the day for the eastern seaboard, but then try and get in a few people and talks in from right from the Indian community as well, so it could go well into the night. So just be aware, but I think that's always a good thing, isn't it? Just having that sort of passion about documentation. So 3rd and 4th of December, I'll post some more details. The ticket sales and call for proposals are coming end of July, so in a couple of weeks from now. So stay tuned. With that, let's turn over to regular scheduling and don't have to listen to me talk anymore. So I'm going to pass over to Jared. Is Jared in the call already? Jared,
Yes.
if you, yeah.
So I managed to get in. Hooray.
Oh, hey, that's good. You probably, cool. All right. I'm going to just stop sharing and then I can, you can take over if,
no worries. All right. And so you're recording at your end. I can see that.
that's right. Yeah, it's auto recorded. So yeah, it should be up on the YouTube online soon after the meeting.
All right. No worries. I will. Yeah. So host disabled screen sharing is what I get when I try and share my screen. So attendee screen sharing. So maybe you just need to activate it for me and Lana.
All right. Let me see. All right. Actually, I don't know how we could do that, which is pretty interesting. Hang on a second. Sorry. All right. Do you want to try again, Jared?
Yeah, sure. Yep, that looks better. It's good. Okay, I'll go with desktop 2. I think that should get me what I need. So right now you should see my slide deck.
Yeah, I can.
Awesome. All right, I'll get started. All right, folks. Well, look, thanks for having me along for a little quick talk. It won't be probably as long as Lana's because I'm sort of aiming more for a bit of a lightning talk format here because I found something out really cool recently, and I just wanted to share it with everyone on the call because I think it might save people a fair bit of time when they're working with screenshots in their docs. So the title of my lightning talk is Keep It Simple Screenshot, or in other words, how to stop updating your screenshots and delight users. So that might sound a bit strange, but bear with me on that because it'll all reveal itself as we go forward in the presentation. So let's get stuck in. So as technical writers, we know that screenshots are awesome. They cater for a whole lot of different learning styles and reading methods. People who like to scan documentation often stop at screenshots because they have a little bit more visual weight on the page for them. They can also explain things that words sometimes can't. The saying a picture paints 1,000 words is definitely true with screenshots in a lot of cases in your product documentation. And also a real advantage of screenshots is they also create a bit of a varied visual rhythm in your documentation. So again, going back to those reading methods as well, that helps with that sort of way of parsing your documentation and looking for breakpoints where you need to stop and start looking. But sometimes screenshots aren't so awesome. So how many times as technical writers have we encountered these things? Label text changes that mean you have to completely recapture a screenshot because of one teeny tiny little change. How about things like new UI layouts based on customer research when the product team gets great insights from customers and they need to change things because it makes the user experience better, but it also makes the technical writers' editing experience worse. And things like, major UI changes with new version releases, they happen occasionally and they usually throw a cat amongst the pigeons as far as technical writing teams go, because it's a lot of work to update a whole lot of screenshots with new styling. What about subtle brand changes to color schemes and logos and things like that? Better recapture those screenshots again. And of course, the dreaded thing of a product name change in some particular product that you're documenting. It just makes the color drain from your face. So what does all this mean? Well, it means that when things change in your screenshots, you get pretty cranky customers. Just like this monkey here, you get a lot of people screaming at you that your screenshots are broken and that the things don't look right in them and things have changed position, and it makes it really hard to follow procedures. And, you know, that's really hard to deal with sometimes, particularly when you're on a tight schedule or with limited resources as a documentarian. So what if you could actually create screenshots once? You could annotate them once as well, and then just put them into your docs once, and then have them live a life eternal, or as the case may be, eternal for at least a few months in a SaaS product. Well, you can, as the fruit bat surprisingly alludes to here. You what? It's true. You can actually do it. What you can do is create something called simplified user interface diagrams. And what they do is they remove details but keep the context in your screenshots. You can reuse them in more places because you've got less information in them that's specific to certain areas in your docs, and you can update them less. Again, less being around a few months, perhaps, if you're in a SaaS product. So you can go from something like this, and yes, I know this is meta, this is the previous slide I was on, to something like this. So from that to this, and focus on just the details that you need to focus on. So before I go too much further, I've used this word SUI and simplified user interfaces, and I haven't actually really told you what it is. Well, now's the time to learn. So as you can see, Anton Bolin is from TechSmith Snagit, and the whole idea behind simplified user interfaces was born from Snagit. It's something they've cooked up in their product, and they're sort of socializing a bit. So what it is really, it's really just a design treatment for your screenshots. What it does is it, as I've alluded to, it takes the unimportant stuff, gets rid of it, and lets you focus on just what you need to in the user interface. So that's pretty much what a SUI is. And it's SUI, not SUI, because it's easy to say things like a long word like that with just a few syllables. So there you go, SUI. So why should you use a SUI? It's probably a good question. It looks interesting, but why? We always like to know why as technical writers, and I've got a few ideas here that might help you understand the why. So again, it helps users focus on the important bits in your interface. A lot of the time, product interfaces tend to be rather complex, and complex in a lot of reasons for a particular purpose, but sometimes that can actually make it hard for people to understand what they need to be looking for, particularly in a large interface screen capture. If you choose to simplify your user interfaces, you can also save a little bit of money with translation costs, because you're not having to localize images over and over again with all the different locales and the dialects that you're using in your product. The real advantage is that it also hides sensitive information. How many times as a technical writer have you had to fuzz out some words because there's sensitive customer information that you can't share, but you really need to get that view in your documentation? SUIs can help you with that. And it also lessens the need for dummy instances, building upon that whole sensitive information type of thing. You don't need to worry about the information that's on the screen because it's all hidden and redacted. So from that perspective, SUIs reduce content revision. And as technical writers, that's got to be music to your ears, because we usually don't have a lot of time to work on this sort of stuff. So anything that we don't have to do means that we can work on stuff that's more valuable. So let's go on to the next thing. Sounds interesting. Well, how do you do it? Well, the way you can make from the pictures that you saw earlier, the way that you can make a simplified user interface or a SUI is you. So I'm getting a bit of background noise from somebody in there. Could you mute? Sorry. The areas in your UI that you always tend to change, like menus and content areas and stuff like that, they're the ones that you want to try and identify early on. to try and work out whether you should redact the information in them to make them a little bit more maintainable. So you can go and hide the details with panels and boxes and things like that to block out the information that you don't need your users to be looking at in your screenshots. And then the other thing that's like a bit of a level up that you can do as well is you can use a neutral color palette or a color palette that matches your product interface to redact that information, so it sort of stays a little bit more on brand and doesn't look so jarring. So that sounds a bit hard, right? Like, how would you go and do all of that stuff, like manually drop boxes everywhere and individual elements of the screen? That, you know, could take a while depending on what tool you're using. But what I've found, and the reason why I'm giving this presentation to you all today, is I've found something that I've found that makes it pretty easy to do. And that just happens to be Snagit 2020. So if you'll entertain me, I'll do a very quick product demo. And no, this isn't actually a pitch or anything. This is just the tool that I've found that does this the best. So I'm trying to save you some time. So if I go out of presentation mode here and go into the user interface here, this is the one that I did before. And I want to show you sort of the method you use to capture something like this. I would have liked to do it on the product I'm documenting at the moment, but we haven't yet released it. So I figured it's probably safer for me to do it on something we all know, which is the slides that you're seeing here. So we'll bring up the selection caret here and just zoom into a bit of it and capture it. You all would have seen how to do this probably in a lot of different screen capture tools. So once you've got that in there, here's the Snagit interface. And it comes up here with a number of options at the top. And one of those is simplify. So if I click on the simplify options, you'll see that in the corner here, what it's done is it's had a look at the interface that you've got, and it's analyzed the color palette and sort of automatically selected the color palette it thinks is about right for what you're trying to do. So what you can do now is you can just click auto simplify, and with one click, it hides everything that it thinks it needs to hide. So you can also go in there and add in extra obfuscation if you want, or dial up the detail or dial down the detail as well. So you can like show more things, you can hide more things, or you can go really opaque and show nothing except for what you think you need to show. And if you want to show some stuff, you just click on it and get rid of it. And you can start to reveal the information you want. Like, for example, you might want to be talking about the content area here in the slide deck, and then you might want to refer to a particular menu option that you need to select. So what you can do is just go up to here, remove the detail you want, and then perhaps do a step call out or something like that up to there. So you can go here, drag it over to there, resize it, and then in your documentation, you can say, click the plus menu to add a slide or something like that. So you can, that's a bit of a really quick and dirty demo of how to actually make a SUI. But what I want to do now is go back to the next slide, which is resources, because there's a few links and stuff that you might want to actually look at if you're interested in learning more about simplified user interfaces. And no spoilers here. Most of them are actually TechSmith Snagit resources. So the links here will show you sort of what simplified user interfaces are in a little bit more detail than what I provided to you today. You can also see a longer form presentation of simplified graphics and some of the more deeper metrics into why you might want to use it. There's also some examples of simplified user interfaces that you can find here in the blog. And one of those is actually of Slack. They use simplified user interfaces really nicely in all their product onboarding. So that's worth checking out. And this last link here, although you might not be able to tell from the link title, is actually about using simplified user interfaces in your videos and onboarding videos as well. So you can take simplified user interfaces or SUIs to the next level. And actually put it into videos, because if you think screenshots are hard to maintain, videos are about 5 times harder to maintain when things change. So it's worth looking at that if you've got that problem at the moment. So that brings me to the end of my quick and dirty talk on keeping it simple in your screenshot interfaces with SUI. So if you'd like to say hi to me, you can do so on Twitter, on WriteTheDoc Slat, and on LinkedIn. I'm Jaron Morgs on all of those platforms. So thanks for your time today. I hope you got some value out of this little quick presentation. If you've got any other questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jared. I liked your use of the bat in that presentation. Really timely. Sorry, couldn't resist.
That's right.
All right. Lana, you're up next if you want to share your screen. And as I've typed in the chat window, look, we usually don't have questions in Write the Rock events, but this is 2020, it's all virtual. So feel free to put in any questions you might have, and Jared and Lana can get to the questions at the end of the presentations. But yeah, and feel free to chat if that's something you like to do. You ready, Lana?
I'm just getting an error message, so I'm going to have to try and do this on the web UI instead. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
I'm just going to log out and log back in again.
Sure. Meanwhile, I might just use this opportunity to quickly check, is anyone here online today who is up for a lightning talk, just extempore? Just put your hand up and just let me know if you want to do a quick 5-minute chat, or if you've got something on your mind you want to chat with the community. Is there someone who wants to put their hand up? Not a lot of takers for that one.
I was going to say, Swapnil, you don't need to be nearly as prepared as me for my lightning talk. You can, if you've got some information you want to share, just speak about it. You don't need slides. Go in there and get the information out there. You might be surprised who you can help with stuff that's floating around in your mind.
That's right, and we're amongst friends, so yeah, don't be hesitant.
Swapnil, I've got something that I saw that might be of interest regarding Word 365. I can quickly share with. It's a link. Wouldn't take that long.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no worries. Go ahead.
It's Ross. I met you last year at the conference.
Yeah, I remember Ross. Yeah, nice. Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you want to go in now, we can get your screenshot sharing, and then we'll get Lana back in once she logs back in.
Okay, let's.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Lana's coming now. Ross, do you just want to hold on for a minute? Just maybe we can get back to you out soon after Lana's presentation.
Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep, I can.
Oh, for some reason or another, you're coming out of the wrong speakers. Let's try that. Okay, share screen.
Thanks, Ross. You can see your thumbs up.
Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome. We have a win. Okay, so just in case anyone doesn't get the slightly obscure reference here, I'm referencing the Pat Benatar song, Give It Your Best Shot, as in screenshot. I realized after I did it, it was probably a little too subtle. Anyway, when I started work at SUSE about 18 months ago. SUSE, for those of you who don't know, is a Linux operating system company. I work full-time remote from home. And so one of the first things I did is had to head off to Nuremberg, which is where head office is in Germany, and of course did a training session with my new colleagues. And I'm sure you're all familiar with this scene where you're looking over the shoulder of someone who's basically doing the job you're expected to do. So I was in Nuremberg, my first week on the job. I was watching over a shoulder, and the documentation suite was being built ready for publication. And one of the things my new colleague did during this process was run a command that automatically updated the screenshots in one of our books. And I was super keen to dig further into that and find out not just how it worked, but I also wanted to know how effective it was, because I'd never worked with a tool like this before. So of course I came back home, got over the jet lag, and I went and looked at the repository. The book in question that we were generating screenshots for was our reference guide, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about that guide. So the product that we are writing for is a pretty complicated systems management tool. It's possible to interact with the tool using an API or at the command prompt, but the grand majority of our users use a web interface, which looks something like this. So this is their primary method of interacting with the product. But as you can imagine, with a tool like this, the web UI is actually pretty complicated. There's lots of menu items. And if you look at each of those menus items, they have an arrow next to them. They all have a huge amount of submenus, and there's lots of different options and settings to play around with. So we've developed a pretty simple context-sensitive help mechanism. So you click on that little blue icon there at the next to the page heading, and it takes you to the relevant page in our reference guide. You can also browse our reference guide directly from the doc suite and from the online documentation, and you will find that it has the same chapter layout as our web UI. So on the left there, that's what our web UI looks like. In the docs, that's what our navigation in our documentation looks like, and they are more or less the same. You should be able to drop down each of those menu items and see the submenus. So let's look at the screenshot automation tool. It was developed in-house, and for reasons I don't fully understand, it's called Fennec. A Fennec, apparently, is a military reconnaissance vehicle. Don't ask me, I've got no idea. So the idea is that Fennec, that is the tool, not the tank, follows the URL paths that we specify in the document, grabs a screenshot of the page at that URL path, crops it, and updates the image file in the document. It's all handled with some pretty nifty JavaScript magic, and it is pretty cool. You've got to admit it. I thought it was. Anyway, we had nearly 300 screenshots in the reference guide at last count. So that is one screenshot, at least one screenshot for every part of the web UI. And I was super happy to find out that I wasn't going to have to manually maintain all of those. But then I started digging a little deeper, and I came across some screenshots that didn't really work. This is hilariously a screenshot of a screenshot. This is from the documentation that was current when I joined. It's, as you can see, 6.6 notification messages in the documentation, and the screenshot that goes along with that is of a notification messages screen that has no notifications in it. It's just blank. There's nothing there. The thing we're actually discussing isn't even in the shot. That's a problem. There were also quite a few like this. So useful enough. We're in the systems all section. The screenshot does show some systems, but if you look closely, you'll see there are no updates, no patches, no packages. The base channels are all pretty much the same. There's just nothing happening here. It's not interesting. And so it's sort of a bit hard to discuss things in this situation. So it sort of makes you wonder how useful it really is. So we sort of ended up with this situation where we had a really neat solution to the maintenance overhead of screenshots, but we hadn't really considered whether or not we were getting value out of them. And so when my niece was younger, the one question she always asked us was, because why? And that's, I think, probably a very valid question in this situation. So here's a list of things that I think you should consider before you go down this route of automating screenshots. So first of all, and this applies to all content documentation, of course, but think like a reader and consider what pathway your reader is on. And of course, we talk about reader pathways a lot when we think about information architecture. I hadn't really considered them in terms of screenshots before now. So things like, it's about considering what your reader is doing immediately before they see your screenshot. If they might be staring at a UI wondering how to get started. They might be trying to fill information in a form and trying to work out what content they actually need to put in there, what parameters they need. They might be clicking around a UI and lost, trying to find some piece of information or trying to find out where to enter something. Or they might just be staring at a blinking command prompt. Those are all valid things, and it's important to consider that pathway. Now, the second thing is about, does it add value, and do you really need screenshot? And these two are really quite closely related. I know we talk about content types a lot in documentation, but I think it helps to frame whether or not you need a screenshot. If you are documenting a concept, remember, a concept is all about answering the question, what is it? Does your screenshot help answer the question, what is it? I think in most cases, concepts are most often paired up with something like a diagram or some paragraph text rather than a screenshot. A screenshot doesn't always answer what is it, because the answer to what is it is not always it's a web UI. So with tasks, I think tasks quite often are the most useful with screenshots, because tasks are about answering the question, how do I do it? And if you're answering the question, how do I do it, sometimes that does require a screenshot. It's about put this piece of text in this box on the interface. Here's where you find the box. Here's where you click the button. So I think for the most part, tasks are where screenshots are required. However, I would shy away from putting in a screenshot at every step in a procedure, for example. Things like, step 1, enter this here, and then a screenshot would probably be overkill, and it can break the flow of your task. You might prefer to consider just putting, and this is something I've been doing a lot recently, is doing all of the procedure and then just putting like a final screenshot at the end of what it should look like when you're done. And finally, references. And you might remember I was looking at a reference guide and trying to work out why we had 300 screenshots in it. When you look at a reference guide, what's happening in this situation at least is the reader pathway is that they're looking at the UI. They're wondering what to put in, how to navigate that, what information they're trying to do. And so they click on the blue help button and they get shown a picture of what they're already looking at. So it's actually not very useful in most cases. It's not giving them any extra information. So in that case, in reference information, what you normally need is things like a table of icons, options, or settings. And in most cases in our reference guide now, we're pulling a lot of those images out and we're replacing them with tables. And finally, the third point is, how much will it cost? And cost isn't just about money, it's also about time and human hours and maintenance overhead and that kind of thing. I think in most cases, and this is certainly what we've found with our particular situation, is that you can do a little bit more with less. The SUIs that Jared was just talking about is certainly on our list to implement. And we've actually, if I can give you some numbers, we had just about 450 screenshots total in our entire suite. We've taken out nearly all the 300 odd that we had in the reference guide. So we're down to somewhere between 100 and 200 screenshots total, and we're busy knocking a lot of those out as well, and hopefully replace them with either SUI or more simplified, hand-curated, much more useful screenshots, which means that we can reduce the overhead of having to maintain Fennec. I'd much prefer if it was named after this cute little guy with the pointy ears. That's also a Fennec, but it's spelt differently. But yeah, it means we can get rid of Fennec. We don't have to maintain that tool anymore. We can have fewer shots. Our documentation is more useful that way. We're getting more value out of our screenshots. And just to refute what Jared said, in technical writing, I don't think it is true that a screenshot is worth 1,000 words. I can give 100 words or so to describe what's in a screenshot quite a lot of the time. I would argue that you need screenshots to help describe the how, and you need words to describe the what and the why. Oh, and never send a machine to do a human's work. Quite often, these things require human interaction. And that's it. I am done. Does anyone have questions?
Thanks, Lana. If anyone's got questions, they can unmute themselves and ask directly as opposed to chatting.
I can't see the chat.
So just a question, just kind of when evaluating when a screenshot is useful and when it isn't. If you're creating content that's going to be viewed on a mobile device, do you find that screenshots are visible, or do you find you need another solution?
Our screenshots, our entire documentation suite is pretty responsive, so we don't have too many problems. The tools that we're using, and we're using Antora actually, which is actually resizing things quite nicely. However, I would argue that probably most of our readers are reading on a laptop or a bigger screen most of the time. So I certainly haven't had anyone come to me and say, "Oh, these screenshots are terrible on my phone," but that's not to say that they're not in some cases. From my own reading, what I've seen is they're pretty responsive and they're not too bad. I think if you had too many of them, like that article when I was talking about procedures, if you've got a screenshot in at every procedure step, then yeah, I think screenshots would definitely get in the way of being able to scroll that on a smaller screen. But I think it breaks up the content regardless, no matter what you're reading on.
Cool. Thanks, Lana. Has anyone got any other questions? Okay. I'll take that as a no. Excellent. Thanks, Lana. Thanks for sharing.
Actually, no, I've got a question. If that's
yeah, sure. Yeah. No worries. Go ahead, Cameron.
Hey, Cameron.
What about drawing on Lana? What about drawing on screenshots and then the maintenance overhead that comes with maintaining the drawings that are on screenshots?
So I think if you're going with a simplified user interface method, then something like what Jared was proposing, that I guess it all comes back to the cost and the benefit, right? So simplified user interface stuff is pretty easy to maintain if you've got a tool like Snagit or something like that, and we're investigating that as soon as it'll work out if that's a route we want to go down. But again, it's about fewer screenshots that add more value. If I've only got 50 screenshots to maintain, and I take a little bit more time on each of them, that's probably adding more value than if I had 400 screenshots to maintain and I'm automating everything. It's about cost of each screenshot, basically. I think it probably needs to be a suite specific decision that you make depending on your own use case.
Cool, thanks.
And how often your UI changes. You might notice from those screenshots that I shared that our UI in our web interface, as well as in our doc suite, has changed significantly over the past couple of years. We just had to retake a whole bunch of screenshots because of branding changes. So those things happen as well.
Yeah, I've also noticed that if you can be quite specific about what you include in your screenshot. So if you don't include the background screen, then you don't need to update all your screenshots every time Windows goes and updates.
I think too, you need to remember that just because some colors change or some fonts change, don't stress too much about it. If the colors or the fonts have changed in the background, people will still be able to work out what's going on in your UI. People have different colors and fonts and things in their UI when they're reading it locally anyway, just because of local settings. You might have accessibility options on, or you might have dark mode enabled. So just because a color or a font has changed in your UI, if the content's still correct, I wouldn't be in any hurry to update it unless you need to. Cool. Was there any other questions?
All right. Thanks,
I
Lana.
think that's it. Thanks, Swapna.
Thank you. So Ross, we still got you online?
Yep, I'm here.
Yep. Do you want to share what you wanted to talk about? A quick lightning talk?
I can do that.
Yep, thank you.
Just bear with me. Now, screen. Yes.
You might have
yes.
to stop sharing, Lana. If that's okay. Yeah, that's all good.
Okay. So, hi, I'm Ross. Just a quick one from me. I work in government, Transport for New South Wales, and I subscribe to a publication that comes out every week called PS News, which is public service news. Came across this article, which you can hopefully see on the screen, about Microsoft's new tool for inclusive language. I guess fairly topical at the moment with things going on. And I don't actually use Office 365. We are migrating to that. We're a bit slow in government. Sorry, I've got it. I don't use Word 365. We've got the Office 366. But what I was wanting to ask the group here has anyone used 365? Because apparently it's got an inclusive option that it runs over your words to say if it's inclusive. Have you heard about this before? Or maybe you don't use Word.
821383.
It's definitely news to me, Ross, but it sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you do it. You go to your settings and you find inclusiveness. I mean, the review's saying it's not terribly refined. You know, occasionally slips up, but I just came across this and thought I might have to check this out because being in government, we have to be very inclusive with whatever we write and publish. And our team is looking at this at the moment as just something else to consider. Anyway, that's all from me from government. I use Word quite a bit, so but I haven't used Word 365. So
you can get standard.
I don't use. Sorry.
I was going to say you can get standalone checkers that aren't part of a specific word suite. And I'm trying to find the one that I demoed at the last conference. But
yeah, if you can send that through, that'd be great. I'd love something. It's always good to have something independent, like not always attached to something else.
But the problem with those sorts of tools is that they tend to expect to be able to link plain text or Markdown, not something squirreled away in Flair or Office or something like that.
Right. Okay. But what about a word editor? Just a plain, could you use something like that?
So what do you mean by a word editor? You mean a text editor?
It's like a text editor. Could use it with that.
Yeah. So you know, if you keep your content in a plain text format, so you know, something like ASCII or RTF
yep,
or whatever.
ASCII. Yep.
Then obviously you could use a text editor to edit that. The way I tend to work is that I run the linters as a process, like I'm building software because I'm a software developer. But some of them have plugins that do actually allow you to integrate them into VS Code or Sublime or whatever, and then they become, I guess, what you're looking for, which is it's interactive as you're typing and validating text. And
I use the text editor quite a lot. Would you mind putting that link if you find it in the meetup comments?
Yeah.
If you find it.
Yeah. What I'll do is there's a guy in the UK has written a whole article on these various tools. So I'll post that when I find it.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much.
I'll put it on the meetup.com discussion.
Yeah. Does Swapnil, how about yourself? Do you with your editing and reviewing, proofing things, what do you use yourself?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Alec.
I was going to say, I actually cheat because what I really do is we have a very good technical writer here on staff, and so I get her to review my work.
Okay.
In a machine.
That's good if you got that resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can add that this is a topical conversation with Google technical writers at the moment as well. And I'm going to flip hats and jump straight into the open source community that I'm also involved in with the Good Docs project, which I've just put a link into a wider conversation where we're talking about linting in general and being able to work out how we integrate tools with style guides, of which inclusive language is a subset of that. And if anyone actually would like to jump in and start trying to solve these problems, then reach out and to us on the Good Docs project.
That's a nice plug, Cameron, for you. I know you're always looking for people.
All right. Thanks, Russ. Thanks for sharing that. We've got maybe another 5 minutes if anyone wants to have a quick lightning talk. If not, I'm happy to share something that I've learned recently, if that's all right.
Sorry, just to jump in, I've actually found that link and I've posted it to the Zoom chat.
Okay. Cool. I'll put that in the meetup page as well. Thanks, Alex.
Where is the Zoom chat? It seemed to have disappeared. Do you know?
So on your window, you should, if you scroll down, you should probably have like a chat next to your share screen or something.
I've got reactions. I've just got reactions.
Oh,
It's gone.
okay. I'll put it in the meetup page if that's all right.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, I'm just gonna quickly, I've got 5 minutes. I'm just gonna quickly share something. So recently, I've just was working on a contract with Seek in the developer team, and you know how with development teams, and this is my start of a lightning talk if that's not obvious, but it's so with development teams, you know how sometimes developers ask you to write documentation and also draw up diagrams quickly. So it's not really a screenshot thing, but this is like a life hack that I've just found out. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. I don't know how many of you have heard of Mermaid. It's a JavaScript library, and so you know how with development teams or doc environments, they've become increasingly like text driven, markdown driven, and they you don't necessarily as tech writers, you jump onto a project and you want to draw maybe like a flow chart or some sort of a user journey, and you don't really have the luxury of time and the tools at your organization. So something like Visio or any of the web tools. So this is something I picked up at my contract. It's called Mermaid, and it's got all the information in here. Basically, all you can do with Mermaid is you can have all these flowcharts and diagrams built into your Markdown documentation. So it's got the whole things. I'll put this link on the meetup page as well. I'll give you a quick rundown of how it works. So it's a library. You can integrate it within your product itself, but even if you don't want to maybe put it into your documentation directly, what you can do is they've got a live editor, and then on the left you've got the code and then the preview. So even if you wanted to just quickly drum up a flow chart and you're not necessarily very good at things like Visio, or you don't want that to spend that sort of effort, all you can do is, and you can just go in and it's got some examples here. So if I just have a look at that, if I maybe add something in here, and this is pretty much on the fly, so I don't know how this is going to work, but maybe all right. This is going to probably take a while. I can find everything on here. No, that demo is not going to work. But I'm going to just quickly anyway demonstrate it. It's just you've got these different things. You've got a flowchart or a sequence diagram or a state diagram. So if you just quickly go through this, and let's say you wanted to pick up a state diagram, which sort of shows like a workflow of how things work, and it's got the code in here. You can play around with the code and literally move things around in here in the code, and it brings up this preview. So once you've got the preview, you can literally point to the link to view or download this as a SVG or an image or a PNG, and then if you're interested and want to put it into your documentation, you literally use the copy markdown and put it into your documentation. So this is like a life hack that I picked up, and I think it saves a hell lot of time if you're just trying to draw up something quickly, just in terms of a flow chart or a state diagram. You've got most of the documentation here. It also has a user journey feature built in. So if you just wanted to show what a product, like a life cycle through a journey, you can use that sort of code and put it in the preview, and you can preview that and send it off to whoever you need to, just to get some sort of collaboration happening. So that was my quick lightning talk. I think we're right on time here. Has anyone got any questions? Stop sharing there for a second. Okay, yeah, we've got a couple of things about Mermaid and also Plant UML. I think there's quite a few sort of similar tools in here. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for today. I think we're right on time there. Sorry, there's someone there.
Oh, I was just going to ask if you can you upload like icon sets to use?
Not sure. I haven't tried it myself, but I can put the link in
Yep.
there. We might be able to look at the documentation.
Yeah, I'll go and look. Go and check it out.
Yeah.
Could be useful.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, so Russell said you can't put it in Mermaid. Not icon sets in Mermaid. Okay.
Oh, that's disappointing.
I think that's rounded up the hour nicely. So thanks everyone for joining in. Like I said, just a quick plug for the conference as well. We're doing the conference virtual this year with Write the Docs India. The dates are 3rd and 4th of December, and the call for proposals and the tickets will be released in a couple of weeks from now by end of July. So thanks everyone for your time, and I will post this recording on the YouTube channel and post a link in the meetup page as well. And thanks everyone. See you later.
Thanks
Can
for
we do the
hosting, Swapnil.
customary Zoom.
Thanks, Swapnil.
Gives? Yeah. All right. See you later.